Well, before I get into the review of the opening weekend action, and by the way, this is part one of the opening weekend review. I'm going to review the Saturday game right before I go to work, and then I'll review the Sunday game when I get back from work. And, before I start that, I got some bad news. So, apparently, the desktop that I've been using for over 6 years now, yeah, it probably have died yesterday because when I went back home from going to LA to watch LAFC versus Inter Miami, and as soon as I got home and I tried to turn on my desktop so I can watch some of the condensed highlight of games that I wasn't able to see, mostly Sunday game that is, it didn't work. It didn't turn on. And something tells me that probably the computer have burned out. And I will admit that I have not done a great job in terms of taking care of my gaming PC, and that I really actually cleaned the PC so that over time it did develop dust, and I just kind of left it alone because I was kind of a little bit too lazy to it, and it seemed like that desktop had enough, and now it doesn't work anymore. And that's bad news in terms of the Sports Hub series and also the match vlog, because that's the PC I use to edit my video and render my video before I upload it onto this channel. It's not really bad news in terms of me doing this video. Usually when I do reviews or news of the week, I just literally upload it, or if I have to have like two clips on these review, preview, and news of the week video, I'll just basically put it on Movie Maker and just kind of render it, and that's not really a big issue, but it is a big issue for the Sports Hub series and match vlog. Now, I could still edit on the laptop that I'm using to record all my video, but the problem is the laptop is not built to render video, and even though I have done it before, I just feel reluctant to do it many times and do it every single week because it's gonna really burn out this laptop life. So yeah, I think I'm gonna have to buy a new desktop, and I really don't want to buy one right now because I just spent a lot of money just going to I spent a lot of money planning these trips that I'm going between now and the end of March, and I just feel like if I spend more money, I am going to be really low in the budget. And keep in mind, I am not rich. I am actually very, very poor, like the Quakes front office. And in terms of some of these trips, like the Quakes front office, I also penny pinch in terms of where I stay, and also really the only time I actually spend big is when I'm at the stadium, because when I'm at the stadium I want to get the best kind of experience. Other than that, if you talk about hotel or airport or even going out to eat, I tend to not spend a fortune at all, and I usually being very cheap about where I stay in a hotel or where I actually eat. I mean, there's multiple times I actually even stay at a hostel just to cut costs so I can spend a little more of going to the stadium to watch some of the game. But that being said, after my little spiel of bad news about my desktop not working anymore, let's talk about the opening weekend of action. So, if you are a person that like to see goals, well, unfortunately, I hate to say that there was not a lot of that in the opening weekend, which makes sense because a lot of these teams, from what I saw in this opening week game, seems like they're still in preseason mode, and that it's going to take a couple of weeks for most of these teams to get into kind of their full stride, and that's, I think, is when we're going to see more goals come in. Although, having said that, maybe the fact that there hasn't been a lot of goals, and maybe the fact that some of these games has been very close. I mean, throughout this weekend, I think there actually hasn't been a blowout game. Like, the closest blowout was 2-3-1 Resort, and even that, I wouldn't call that kind of a blowout kind of game. So, yeah, it just tells you that the league is getting more competitive after what we saw in the opening weekend, and I won't be surprised if that's going to be the case for the rest of the season. But we begin off with the first game, and it's Colorado with a 2-1 win against DC, and I'm wearing Colorado because I was very impressed what the Rapids did in this game. The Rapids played a perfect road game against DC, and probably one of the best road game I've ever seen them play against DC United. Now, in the beginning, it was kind of very even, and it was kind of very end-to-end to start the game with a ton of long ball, but there wasn't really kind of a lot of chances in the first half, and we head to halftime scoreless. Now in the second half, Burbom hit the post on a free header in the 57th minute. Turns out that was actually a warning shot for DC, because just 3 minutes later, Russell Canals scores from Julian Gresso to give DC the 1-0 lead and score the first ever goal of the 25th season in MLS to give DC, as I said, a 1-0 lead. However, that lead was short-lived, because 7 minutes later, Kai Kamara scores from Jack Price and Rosenberry, and even though this wasn't a set-piece goals that resort into this equalizer for Colorado, it looked like a set-piece goal. I mean, Jack Price basically delivered a beautiful ball from Kai Kamara, and Kamara rise up above every single defender to hit that one in. That's something we saw a lot last season with the Rapids, especially in a set-piece situation. And if that's going to be the case again, boy, you tell me that the Rapids could once again be a team that is going to be the king in terms of set pieces. Now, Colorado really started to push forward right near the end of the game. Drew Moore had a chance to give them the lead in the 75th minute from a free header, but unfortunately he fluffed his lines. And just as we thought we were going to head into a 1-1 tie to begin the first game of the new MLS season, Jonathan Lewis scores from Rubio in the 92nd minute to give Colorado the 2-1 lead, and that is the final score of this game, as the Rapids, a very impressive road win, something that we probably have not said about the Rapids it's a couple of years ago, or something we probably rarely say about them when they go on the road. But don't be surprised, we're going to maybe get used to this, because this Rapids team, not only they are a dark horse team, but this team could really be a competitive team if this is how the Rapids is going to look. Shots in this game, the Rapids had 21 shots compared to 12 that DC had, 7 shots on goal compared to 4 that DC had, 9 shots off target compared to 4 that DC had, 5 shots that was blocked compared to 4 that DC had, and possession-wise, 53% possession compared to 47% possession that DC has. And again, the Rapids, what an impressive road win it is, and they did something that it took them 12 games to do last season, which is get a win in their season, and now they of course got that win off of their season opener. I am very excited to see how this Rapids team is going to get. And as for DC, yeah, this was definitely not a good performance, and like many teams that have lost throughout this week, I think that you can maybe give them the excuse, the fact that they weren't totally ready and they weren't really in terms of getting back to match fitness, and that we'll see how they are going to do in the future if they do get back to match fitness, because they really struggle on the attack in this game and also kind of struggle on the defensive side too. But next up is Montreal. So the Impact, after that big win against Saprissa, well, they didn't win that game, they only drew 0-0, but they still won in terms of the tie and move on into the CCL quarterfinal, where they're going to be playing against Olympia, and that should be a very interesting quarterfinal, and that one of those teams that is able to win those two legs is going to be kind of considered a Cinderella story in the CONCACAF Champions League. But in terms of MLS, they also got off to a great start, and they of course won 2-1 against New England. In the first half, New England did get the early lead. It was Bunbury from Pineda to Gustavo Bo to give the Revs a 1-0 lead, but Montreal did equalize in the 37th minute, and it's Kyoto scores from Waterman and Urruti to tie it up at 1 apiece. Now, in the second half, New England did start off well, and they started to kind of dominate the game a little bit, but they just couldn't convert their chances. But at the same time, Montreal had a chance to go ahead in the 63rd minute when Turner robbed Urruti from a straight tap in. I mean, Maxi Urruti, I don't know how in the world he does not score that one. Like, he was wide open in the box. All he had to do was just tap it in, and he just hits it straight to Matt Turner. Now, in the 73rd minute, it looked like New England took the lead back in the 73rd minute, because Zahibo actually scored this goal, and he was doing kind of the Karate Kid celebration. Like, they, of course, just scored a goal to give them the lead back on the road, but they got a VAR, and later it was found out on VAR that on the development of the play, one of their their player was in an offside position. And I like how the fact that the Revs broadcast team, which I didn't know that Charlie Davies was one of the broadcaster from the Revs broadcast team, because I think in the previous year it was some English guy that was the color analyst, and Charlie Davis I think now is the new Revs color analyst or something like that. But they were completely clueless of what they just saw. Like, they keep saying there's no way the fact that it has to be disallowed. Did you see how in the development of the play that one of your player was in an offside position? I mean, this is the thing with some of these local broadcasts, where some of these are very biased, and some of these are also very kind of homer in terms of some of their calls, and it does take a while for them to realize that, oh yeah, that was actually offside, and what we just kind of spiel on throughout the VAR process was completely false. So that goal was disallowed, and then 7 minutes later, Montreal completely flipped the script. Urruti scores from Taidir, and I wrote goal of the week with a question mark because this was an amazing goal from Maxi Urruti, and this really made up for his bad miss that he had earlier in the second half, where he basically just completely chipped Matt Turner to put it into the back of the net to give Montreal a 2-1 lead. But New England did have a chance to equalize late in the game, and in the 85th minute, Buchanan, who was standing wide open in the back post, and he literally had an empty net. All he had to do was just head that one into the empty net, and this game would have been tied up at 2 apiece. But somehow, in some way, he hits the post from 3 yards out with an empty net to aim, and I mean, that is like, I know Buchanan is still a young player, and that of course does happen sometimes, but yeah, that was definitely a miss that I'm pretty sure he does not want to go back and look at it, because that was one of the worst misses I've ever seen in MLS history. Like, just wide open in the box with an empty net to shoot. Just literally all you had to do was just head it in, and this game would have been tied up at 2 apiece. But instead, Montreal hold on and get the 2-1 victory, and also give Thierry Henry his debut win in MLS. And in terms of shots in this game, 12 shots compared to 16 that New England has, 3 shots on goal compared to 6 that New England has, 6 shots off target compared to 7 that New England has. Both teams had 3 shots that was blocked, and Montreal had 57% possession compared to 43% possession that New England has. And you know, Montreal, they're off to a great start in terms of their season, and they have really kind of started to prove me wrong of the fact that, you know, in the preseason, it was a disaster for Montreal. And the reason why I put them last is kind of in terms of how bad they were in the preseason, and especially the fact that they just lost their best player, Piatti, during the offseason. But they are proving me wrong, and Thierry Henry, I'll tell you what, he's doing a great job in his first couple of games with Montreal. Now, that being said, is this going to continue? We shall see for these next couple of weeks, because there are a couple of resort, or at least for the first 2 resort, there was a couple of times that Montreal got very lucky, and we shall see whether or not if that luck is going to run out if they keep playing like this. And as for New England, yeah, it's a very frustrating loss, especially they had the lead in this game, and they had a chance to tie it up late in this game too, but just gonna have to move on and hopefully get back to winning ways in the future. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is Houston and the Galaxy. So, Houston and the Galaxy ends in a 1-1 tie, and if you were thinking that this game was going to feature some high-flying action, and if you were hoping that Chicharito can actually score his debut goal and actually provide some magic instantly for the Galaxy, yeah, unfortunately, I hate to say it, that was not the case in this game. But 70 seconds into this game, Alexander Katai, the new signing for the Galaxy that they got from Chicago, almost scored his debut goal with the Galaxy just 70 seconds into the game, but he hits the post. The Galaxy did score the opening goal in the 12th minute when Christian Pavone scores from David Bingham, and this is a very rare situation where there's a Route 1 goalkeeping assist. Kind of remind me a lot from that Cali Clasico a couple of years ago, where Bingham, who was still the goalkeeper for the Quakes, played a Route 1 ball to Wando, and basically Wando not only was able to take that Route 1 ball perfectly, but he also scored to tie the game up between the Quakes and the Galaxy in that Cali Clasico. This one was kind of similar, although Pavone did have a lot of work to do, and he did score an absolute golazo to be able to give the Galaxy a 1-0 lead. But yeah, it is very rare you see this happen where a goalkeeper just launch a Route 1 ball and somehow it finds his target and he basically just hits it into the back of the net. Now, Houston did start to get back in the game after that, although they didn't really have a lot of chances. And really, the first half, there wasn't really a lot of chance from either of the side. Now, in the second half, Houston equalized when Minota scores from Zarek Valentin, so another debut player that Houston, of course, had a decent game. That is Zarek Valentin getting his debut assist from Manotas, and just like that, the Dynamo tied the game up at 1 apiece. Now, Chicharito did have some impact in this game in the 65th minute, and that he actually had 2 tries in terms of scoring his debut goal. The first one was actually saved from Marriage, but the second one was somehow clear off the lines, and that this was actually probably the best chance that Chicharito has. He also had a couple of chances that was either being saved by the goalkeeper or the fact that he was kind of being a little bit too unselfish and kind of gave the ball his teammates that unfortunately couldn't put it into the back of the net. But, you know, to say that Chicharito's debut was kind of average is maybe kind of kind, because he didn't really have a lot of big impact besides some notable moment. Definitely came nowhere close in terms of what Zlatan did in his debut. And I'm seeing a lot of people saying that, yeah, Zlatan is definitely better than Chicharito. This is just one game. Keep in mind. I mean, I think he's going to eventually get better as he continues the season. I mean, he's just trying to get his foot set in and trying to get used to MLS and see how it goes. So I think he'll eventually get better, and that even though he didn't have the best of the game, I still think that most likely if he does get better, he could really be a goal scorer like Zlatan when he was with the Galaxy. Now, speaking of the Galaxy, they piled on the pressure late in the game, but they couldn't quite find a killer finish, and that's how this game ends in a 1-1 draw between the Dynamo and the Galaxy. And in terms of shots in this game, Houston had 15 compared to 11 that the Galaxy had. 2 shots on goal compared to 4 that the Galaxy had. 9 shots off target compared to 6 that the Galaxy had. 4 shots that was blocked compared to 1 that the Galaxy had. And possession-wise, 60% possession compared to 40% possession that the Galaxy had. And I guess, you know, both teams, I'm not quite sure they're going to be happy with the point. I mean, the Galaxy, They were thinking that maybe they can get all 3 points with an improved team, but keep in mind, they were playing against a Houston team that they had a lot of trouble in the past couple of years, and at least getting a draw is somewhat an improvement to some of the bad result they had against the Dynamo. And as for the Dynamo, you know, if you're going to be good this season and compete for playoffs, you got to get all 3 points at home, and starting at home and getting a point to start the season is not the way you want to think about competing in the playoffs if you are going to heavily rely on your home form to get there. But moving on into the last game on this board is the Quakes and TFC. And this was definitely one of the crazier Quakes game that I attended. So it ended in a 2-2 draw, and something at the end that the Quakes did was something that they have never done before, or at least something that they probably haven't done in a very long time. And really the other thing that happened at the end was just something looked like out of a movie script, and that it's just too good to be true. But in the first half, and especially in the first 40 minutes, not much really happened. I mean, it was a very dire first half for majority of this game, and this of course will happen because you have 2 teams that are playing their first competitive game. They might not have really brushed off that off-season rust that they had, and you know, preseason game, I know they're there to try to get players back to match fitness, but what is always tough is that in the first game, when the players are actually playing competitively, and that's the first time they're actually playing competitively, that is where it could be a little bit issue, and that match fitness is, match fitness should be good, but in terms of having that competitive mindset, that could be something that needs a couple of weeks for some of these teams to address before they can really get back to it. And we saw in the first 40 minutes where both teams looked like they were still in preseason mode. Now, in the 41st minute, TFC opened the scoring in this game when Pozuelo scored a penalty. I thought it was a soft penalty that was called, and I know I'm kind of being a little bit biased here, but I thought when Rios brought down Josie Altidore, and especially Josie Altidore has a history of being a guy that tends to go down very easily, and in this game, he gone down easily a lot of time, and there was a lot of displeasure in the crowd. I thought he kind of gone down a little bit easily. Like, the only argument I will say is that when Rios kind of wrapped around Josie, I think he probably realized that, hey, if a guy decided to wrap around me, I'm just gonna go down very easily and pretend that he actually brought me down. And sometimes that's kind of the thing where, if you're a defender, as much as you want to like one of the things that if you're a defender, and I know Rios is not a defender because he's a striker, you cannot wrap around guys when you're in the penalty box, because most of the time when you decide to wrap around guys like that, either the striker are going to go down too easily and just kind of draw that as a penalty, or the fact that you're most likely going to brought a player down. And in this case, Josie was pretty much being smart and see that how he was being wrapped around and trying to draw the foul, and indeed that of course was the case. So yeah, the penalty was given, and as I say, Pozuelo puts it away. And in the second half, 6 minutes in, Richie Laryea doubled the lead for TFC, and he literally just came on a couple of minutes into this game for Schaffelberg. And this is why I say Richie Laryea back in the season preview, where I think one of the surprise package for TFC has to be Richie Laryea, because I was very impressed of how this kid played last year. And if he keep playing like this, he definitely have a shot to be on the Canadian national team. But TFC 2-0 lead was kind of short-lived, because 2 minutes later, Andreas Rios scores from Espinoza and Alanis, and the Quakes, up until that point, they weren't really playing very well. And at 2-0, I thought it was all set and matched. But, Rios did give us a lifeline and potentially tie the game up. And we did start to generate some momentum. But, that only kind of lasted until probably about the 65th minute, where the Quakes once again started to look flat and just looked like they were out of ideas. And especially in the final 15, they looked like they gave up. Like, the players, not only they were out of gas, but there was just so many sideways passing, and there's just not a lot of movement going forward, where I just think that, yeah, it's clear that they have gave up and they have just ran out of ideas, and most likely this is going to be a 2-1 loss and another home opener loss for the Quakes. But then in the 95th minute, Alanis happened. He scored of what I think could be the goal of the week, because the way that he basically scored this goal, and we don't know if this was actually him trying to hit it in the top left corner from a free kick in a difficult angle, or the fact that he was just trying to whip in. But either way, what a great goal that is. I was going absolutely crazy. Everybody at the Quake Stadium was going absolutely crazy. And, there's times where in stoppage time goal, where I can definitely see that coming with the momentum that a team generate that led to that stoppage time goal. But this was not the case. This one just completely caught me by surprise, which that just makes it even more enjoyable. The fact that I definitely did not expect them to get something out of this game, and it was just going to take one miraculous moment for this game for us to get at least a point out of it, and that miraculous moment happened. And I believe that's also the first time we score a free kick goal in 6 or 7 years right now. Like, the last time I remember we scored one back in 2013, but it's been a long time since the Quakes has been able to score on a direct free kick. And especially the fact that the guy that scored the goal made his debut in this game, and that not many times in every single game that you have a center back who made his debut. And I thought Alanis was very decent in this game when he was making his debut and really put out some of the fire in that back line. I didn't think he was going to also end up in the goal scoring sheet, and that, he not only is going to be the man of the match in this game, but that is going to be something that's going to be talked about for a while in terms of one of the best moment in Quakes history. And that, yeah, I mean, I was completely caught surprised the fact that we were able to get an equalizer in that. And in terms of shots in this game, yeah, there wasn't a lot of them. 11 shots compared to 10 that TFC had. 5 shots on goal compared to 4 that TFC had. 4 shots off target compared to 3 that TFC had. 2 shots that was blocked compared to 3 that TFC had. Possession-wise, 63% possession compared to 37% for TFC. And, for the Quakes, they stole a point in this game, and I know the team is going to be very ecstatic the fact that they were able to steal a point despite not playing very well. But I just hope that during the midweek training, when Almeida puts his squad to training, he better make them run extra hard, because this was just a diabolical performance. And if this is going to be the performance that the Quakes are going to do throughout the rest of the season, it is going to be a very long season, because there's not going to be many times they're going to get bailed out by a late goal miraculous like what we saw in this game. And as for TFC, this has to be very infuriating. And despite the fact that they weren't also at their best in this game, I thought Pozuelo and Altidore was relatively quiet in this one. They had a 2-0 lead. And anytime you have a 2-0 lead and you blew a 2-0 lead and you blow it late in the game, that has to be very agonizing, no matter what kind of circumstances it is. But that being said, I am now going to be switching the boards and look at the last 4 games that happened on Saturday. So Dallas, they got off to a great start to their season as they won their home opener against the Union by a score of 2-0. Now, in the first half, besides the fact that in the 18th minute when Barrios was robbed by Blake, there wasn't really much that happened in the first 20 minutes. And I would even say pretty much for the full first half, because even after that 20-minute spell where it was just slow and very boring, the rest of the first half, there was barely any chances that has happened and barely any golden opportunity for the first goal to come by. So we head to halftime scoreless between Dallas and the Union. In the second half, Koba strikes. Zdeněk Odronsik scores for Fiera to give Dallas the 1-0 lead right on the hour mark. Both teams started to get some chances, but it would be Dallas the one that finished off this game when Paxton Pomykal scores from Tessman. And yes, Tessman is one of the guys that is coming from the Dallas Academy that is playing in this game and also making his debut. And it's got to be great to see that he on his debut with Dallas is able to get an assist. And overall, this performance was a very FC Dallas-like performance where most of their youngster and some of the players that they got from last season was able to contribute. Fiera, Pomykal, and Tessman, all these guys are from the academy. Zdeněk Odronsik is the guy that they got from last offseason. That it's good to see that the Cobra is still continue his goal scoring form. And yeah, that of course was the final score of this game, as Dallas, as I mentioned, they got off to a great start to their season by winning 2-0 against the Union. Shots in this game, 9 shots compared to 15 that the Union has, 5 shots on goal compared to 3 that the Union has, 4 shots off target compared to 7 that the Union has, no shots that was blocked compared to 5 that the Union has, and possession-wise, 50% for both of these teams. So for Dallas, again, a great start for them in the season, and for the Union, it's back to the drawing board for them as they didn't really play very well in this season opener, but they get a chance to prove people wrong by in the next game. I think I'm not quite sure, are they still going to be on the road in the next game, or they're going to be playing at home, but they just need to brush off this tough loss that they had against Dallas on the road. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is the first 0-0 draw of the season. So Orlando versus RSL play into a scoreless draw, and yeah, this scoreless draw is not like one of those scoreless draw that there was a lot of things that you want to remember, and that unfortunately it's one of those scoreless draw that, yeah, not much really happened, and you can probably forget about this game after a couple of days. But I will say this, Orlando really looked good in this game, and what they did look good in this game is that they look very stable at the back. Now, granted, they are playing against RSL, and this is an RSL team that, as I said, during this offseason, they lost one of their best attacker in Jefferson Savarino, and it seemed like they really lost him during that last offseason. But it's a great start for this Orlando City side that there's definitely still some question mark in terms of the back line. Now, unfortunately, the thing that is still a big problem for Orlando City is finishing, because throughout this game, they, first of all, they looked lively in the first half, but the finishing was still lacking from Orlando City, and that they had a lot of chance to get the first goal in the first half. Same thing in the second half. They were dominating the second half and had some decent chances, but they just could not put the ball into the back of the net. Now, since this is the first game of the season, and I usually don't jump into conclusion after the first game of the season. Like, if you jump conclusion of how your team play after the first game of the season, you are absolutely crazy, and that you're going to be wrong in terms of, well, most of the time when you judge that this team is not going to good just because they didn't play a good game. So, I'm not going to judge the fact that Orlando City, their finishing is still a bit of an issue, but, in this game, it doesn't help do there any favor the fact that they have kind of improved their finishing when it is still lacking in this game, and that there's still some big chances that they should have put the ball into the back of net. They couldn't quite do that. Shots in this game, 9 shots compared to 5 that RSL had, 2 shots on goal compared to 1 that RSL had, 4 shots off target compared to 1 that RSL had. Both teams had 3 shots that was blocked and possession-wise, 51% possession compared to 49 that RSL has, and overall it was just a very forgettable nil draw, and I guess RSL will be happy the fact that they didn't play very well in this game, but at least they survived and able to get a point out of this. And for Orlando City, I guess they'll be happy the fact that they got a point. And Oscar Pereira, he definitely, when I see this team, there's definitely some improvement that I see under him, and if he can just get this team's finishing ability much better, then I think this team could definitely make a run for the playoffs. But as of now, finishing is still a big problem for Orlando City after this game against RSL. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is Nashville and Atlanta. So originally I said I was going to say that I thought Nashville played very well in this game, and they really gave Atlanta all they can handle. But there's even a bigger story in this game, and if you're an Atlanta fan, yeah, this game, you might have won this game, but there was a huge price that you had to pay to win this game. And also, if you're an MLS fan like I am, yeah, this was a very devastating loss that we suffered throughout this game, and I, of course, will get to that. But in the first half, it was a shaky start from Nashville, which was expected because, anytime when you're an expansion team and you're playing your first ever MLS game, there's going to be nerves in terms of how you play, and you're just trying to feel like this is just another game and not your first ever MLS game in your club history. And that shaky start didn't help Nashville favor, because they would concede 9 minutes into this game, and it would be Ezekiel Barco score from Franco Escobar, and that was actually the first shot on goal for Atlanta, and that just makes it even more frustrating for Nashville, because despite the fact that they did have a shaky start, they only have given up like 1 shot against Atlanta, and that one actually went into the back of the net. Now, 18 minutes later, Nashville did eventually start to pick up, and they found their first ever goal in MLS as history as well. Their first ever goal in their MLS history, when Walker Zimmerman, the big money signing that they did this offseason, scores on a set piece to tie the game up at 1 apiece between Nashville and Atlanta. But unfortunately, that equalizer was short-lived, because 9 minutes later, Atlanta would retake the lead when Hyman would score to give them a 2-1 lead. However, I thought Nashville got hard done by the linesman here. And what happened in this play was that the linesman actually raised his flag and think that there was an offside against Atlanta, and the Nashville player just stopped. Like, they thought the play is blown dead because the flag went up, but the center ref says that the play hasn't blown dead, and that he actually told the linesman to put his flag that down. So while Nashville thought that the play was dead, Atlanta kept playing, and they completely caught Nashville just off guard because of that. And this is the thing. Linesmen in this league has been taught to only raise your flag if you're super certain that it's an offside position. And that most of the time we've seen games where the linesman raised his flag down and that it was an obvious offside call and fans get upset about that. Well, yes, that is the case, but the reason why the league is doing that is that they can always go back and check over VAR to see whether or not if that was actually an offside goal or not. So yeah, the linesman probably should have known that and should have probably never raised his flag. And second of all, I understand some people would say, well, Nashville, they should play to the whistle. Yes, I understand they should play to the whistle, but I can guarantee you that 9 out of 10 time, or even 99 out of 100 time, that any team, when they see a flag comes up, they would not actually continue and just literally stop play, because they know the play is dead. And there's only 1 out of 100 time that this situation could happen, and unfortunately, it did happen in this game. So, yeah, I feel very bad for Nashville for conceding that goal, and what's even worse is that turns out to be the winning goal of this game. And, obviously, this moment would have been talked a lot about if it wasn't for something that I'm about to kind of mention a little bit later on, because this was a very controversial moment, and I think MLS is going to have to do something about this, because this just doesn't feel fair for Nashville. The fact that they literally thought that the play is blown dead because the linesman raised his flag, only for the linesman to raise his flag back down because the center ref basically told them to. But in the second half, Escobar got subbed off as injury crisis worsened for Atlanta, and that wasn't even the worst part of what Atlanta is about to deal with. Nashville started to have some momentum, but lacked the final product, which isn't surprising because, again, they look very good in terms of the defense and the midfield, but the big problem, as I've been talking about during the season preview and pretty much in everybody's mind, they don't have a striker in this team. If they have a goal scored and have a guy that can put the final product, this team would actually be a very respectable team in MLS, and it will be very interesting to see whether or not if they can get that during the middle of the season, and maybe even doing right now as they're thinking to try to get the striker that will put the ball into the back of net and get that final product. But in the 67th minute, this was when the big story of this game, and this is when Atlanta fans, they wish that this didn't happen, but unfortunately it did happen. So Joseph Martinez was stretched off with an injury, and originally when he got stretched off, he actually got back on his feet and he was walking his own power, and it looked like he was fine. But then later on, there was a report says that he actually suffered a torn ACL, and that report was confirmed yesterday, and that right now there is no timetable of when he's going to undergo surgery, but most likely he will have to undergo surgery, and the timetable of his return is going to be unknown. And yeah, not only this is a big blow to Atlanta, but this is a big blow to MLS in general, because this guy is basically one of the face of MLS, and there was a lot of discussion of what more historical thing that Joseph Martinez is going to do, and now he suffered a torn ACL in the first game of the season. And really, all I have to say about that is I wish Joseph Martinez a speedy recovery. And, for Atlanta, I bet they're basically working behind the scenes and making calls to every available striker that can replace Joseph Martinez right now on the phone, because this is an absolute devastating blow. And that this not only is a devastating blow, but this is a season devastating blow for Atlanta. If Joseph Martinez is going to be out for the season, I don't see how Atlanta could be a team that could actually maybe be like a top 3 or maybe like a team that they were in the last 2 seasons, which is competing in CCL and also competing in MLS Cup. Joseph Martinez is really the heart and soul of this team in terms of goal scoring, and the fact that they're not going to have him, and we saw what happened when they didn't have him for in the first season and also in part of last season, they really struggle. So yeah, this is really bad for Atlanta, and I'm going to be interested to see how they're going to react in terms of losing him. And that, again, I have a feeling the Atlanta front office is just working overtime right now, trying to get a season long of a striker coming into this club done, because this is an absolute devastating blow for Atlanta. Leo, of course, then denied by the post in the 78th minute. That would have given Nashville the equalizer again. And then in the 94th minute, there was more controversy. And yeah, the referee in this game was very, very, very bad. And it's just one of those games where, yeah, this is just classic MLS refereeing. And I'm not even complaining anymore, because this happens all the time in this league, and unfortunately this is just a game that's going to be plagued by bad refereeing. So in the 94th minute, Willis handled the ball outside of his box, but there was no red card shown. And the fact that he handled that ball and that he was the last man when he handled that ball, I have no idea how that's not a red card. Like, that is as textbook as a red card and a sending off as it gets, and yet the referee shows a yellow for that. Now, I'm not quite sure if the disciplinary committee is going to look at that and maybe overturn that call, so maybe Willis is not off the hook in terms of getting a suspension, but that is just one of the worst calls I've seen in MLS history. And thankfully, that call happened so late in the game, because imagine if this happened like in the middle of the game, and how, Atlanta or Nashville should be playing down to 10 men for the rest of the game, and that they end up drawing or winning this game. It would be great. It would be a great accomplishment for Nashville, but there's always that asterisk, the fact that, yeah, their goalkeeper should have been sent off because they handled the ball outside the box. But fortunately, this happened late in the game, and it didn't really matter at the end. But still, it doesn't excuse the fact that this was a horrendous call, and that absolutely this should have been a red card against Willis for handling the ball outside of the box, and that he was the last man. But yeah, that of course is the final score of this game, as Nashville actually dominate pretty much every single category. They dominate the shots with 14 compared to 6 that Atlanta has. 4 shots on goal compared to 2 that Atlanta has. 6 shots off target compared to none that Atlanta has. Both teams had 4 shots that was block, and possession-wise, Atlanta had 55% possession compared to 45% possession, and that, for Nashville, they can be proud of the way that they play here in this game. And that, I think if they keep playing like this, and maybe they can have like a striker on this team that can put in those final product, this could really be a team that maybe can sneak into that playoff conversation. And as for Atlanta, again, the Joseph Martinez injury is going to be absolutely devastating, and I won't be surprised in a couple of days we're going to have some announcement of Atlanta potentially making an emergency signing as to replace Martinez, because I can't see how Atlanta could go an entire season without Martinez and without a replacement striker, and that they could still be competitive and compete for MLS Cup. But moving on into the last game of this Saturday action is SKC and Vancouver, as SKC, of course, predictably beat Vancouver 3-1. Now, to be fair, Vancouver did have some chances late in this game, and that you could say that they probably could have got a point out of this one. But in the first half, SKC completely dominated the game, and their dominance was rewarded in the 17th minute when Alan Pulido scored his first ever goal and making his debut with SKC from Punches to give SKC a 1-0 lead. But then 11 minutes later, Vancouver equalized, and it's Nowitzki, the unlikeliest who scored only his second goal in his career from Milinkovic, to tie the game up at 1 apiece. And again, it was completely against the run of play. SKC completely dominated the game and had some big chances to not just score a goal in this game, and maybe would have went up 2 or 3-0, but Vancouver just with a sucker punch, and that the game is tied at 1 apiece. However, SKC would eventually become dominant again, and eventually did get that lead back when Gadi Quinta scores from Luis Martins to give SKC a 2-1 lead. However, Vancouver almost gave another sucker punch to SKC, because in the 42nd minute, They hit the post after there was a scramble in the box. SKC did not do a good job in terms of clearing it. The ball was bouncing in the box for a couple of seconds, and unfortunately Vancouver just could not quite put it in, and that they were very unfortunate the fact that they hit the post doing that sequence. The second half, SKC continued to dominate. Russell was robbed by Creekpo, and that could have given SKC a 3-1 lead right on the hour mark. But then Vancouver started to create some chances, and after pretty much for majority of the game, Sporting KC being the better team, Vancouver really started to create some chances and started to become the more dominant side. And their best chance came in the 87th minute when Cavallini was denied by Milia and denied of his debut goal that would have tied the game up for Vancouver, and that would have been just as a good feel-good story than Alanis hitting that equalizer for the Quakes in extra or in stoppage time, but it wasn't to be in this case. And then in the 95th minute, Hurtado, the former Vancouver Whitecaps player, would come back to haunt his team by scoring late to pretty much finish this game off from Jerzo, and that's how the final score of this game is, as SKC with a 3-1 win against the Whitecaps. Shots in this game, 11 shots compared to 9 that the Whitecaps had, 4 shots on goal compared to 5 that the Whitecaps had. Both teams had 4 shots off target, 3 shots that was blocked compared to none that Vancouver has, and possession-wise, 52% possession compared to 48% possession that Vancouver has. And, you know, for SKC, they're definitely off to a good start, although that back line is still a little bit questionable because they did give up some big chances to Vancouver, and, you know, they're fortunate the fact that this is just Vancouver, and that if it was other team, maybe those chances would have been into the back of the net. And as for the Whitecaps, you know, I don't want to just quickly judge and quickly write them off and saying, here we go again. This is like the Whitecaps of last season where they get off to a bad start. You think that they might get off to a good start after the squad that they have would get their chemistry all together, and it just never work out. However, you know, this is definitely kind of start to be a little bit similar to last year, and really, if the Whitecaps this season, they don't show any progress, somebody's going to get fired in that front office, or Mark DeSantos could really be in hot water, because this Whitecaps team should be a team that not only is in a deep rebuild, but you also got to start showing some progress. Because if you don't show some progress in this deep rebuild, you're just going to stuck in this hamster wheel of a deep rebuild and never get out of it. But that being said, there you have it. As that is pretty much all the games that I have reviewed during the Saturday action. I, of course, will review the Sunday games later tonight. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.